It's the case with most things that the devil is in the details. Here's a perfect example of how you do an absolute crap camera review. A product photographer was reviewing the Nikon Z7. It was brought to my attention on a board that people are looking for apologies as to why this is a camera worth buying, and I've said endlessly and got attacked for endlessly, the Z7 is a first generation Nikon mirrorless camera. But the key thing that a lot of people are missing, and I'll get to the fallacy of the review, is that there's no such thing as mirrorless versus DSLR in the camera market. They are both competing for the exact same damn money. Okay? There's no such thing as mirrorless camera market and DSLR camera market. There are video-centric photographers that, of course, want and need mirrorless cameras, but there's no such thing as a mirrorless versus DSLR photographic camera market. It is the case that the Nikon Z7 is priced exactly the same as the Nikon D850, which is, by most estimations, and I think I was the first person to say this, indeed I was, at least the first person on YouTube, that the D850 Nikon is the best DSLR camera made ever. Because it's a general purpose, full frame, does it all camera. It does not have the buffer depth of the Nikon D500, and of course it is another $1,300 on top of that, but it's a 45 megapixel wonder house for $3,300. Along comes a first generation Nikon mirrorless camera, miserable by all accounts. Obviously the image quality is wonderful. So a product photographer, a guy who does nothing but product photography, which I myself do, tabletop photography, still life photography. His premise is that, let me read his quote here. The bottom line is that you can make photos however you want with the Nikon Z7. The camera doesn't hold you back. Well, the camera does hold you back. Now, this is the case that if someone only reviews cars that only goes to the grocery store at 30 miles an hour, you know, he's not really a good person for evaluating the high-end performance of a sports car. Obviously, the spectrum of sports cars is incredibly high, but if someone is reviewing a sports car that has cornering issues and transmission speed transference issues, but only drives it to the grocery store and says, you know, hey, what's the problem, man? It gets the job done. Well, yeah, if you only drive to the grocery store, the problem is you're paying a lot of money for a camera that doesn't have the specifications to live up to the needs of the aspects and desires and work necessities of sports, action, wildlife, photojournalism photographers. The camera has no eye detect autofocus. Everybody in the world has been telling you the same thing I said from the get-go, that the Nikon Z7 has inferior autofocus. It doesn't have the capability to autofocus screw drive lenses. So what's the problem? Well, product photography has no autofocus speed issues, you know, for still life. I never said at any point in time, nor did I infer or imply, that the camera output from the Nikon Z7 is in any way, you know, horrible or inferior. It's a high megapixel BSI sensor with wonderful output. Apparently it does have high ISO banding issues in the shadows, but apparently it's hard to actually get that. You actually have to try to get that. So it's not the camera output's the issue. The issue is that it's priced exactly the same as the Nikon D850. It has no eye autofocus. It is inferior in several accounts to the Nikon D850, and it's not a professional camera because it only has one card slot. Even the Nikon manager in Europe, who I quoted like 3 weeks ago, said, "Hey, this is not a professional camera." I forget his exact quote, but that's basically what he said. I got a clip of the interview that he actually did. So the the Nikon Z7, the Nikon Z7 competes for the exact same money, meaning your money and my money, as DSLRs. All mirrorless competes for the exact same money. It's not a different market. DSLR versus mirrorless. There's not. There are video-centric users that require, you know, a mirrorless camera, because the only thing a mirrorless camera is a permanent live view camera. I've always scoffed at the BS of mirrorless cameras. I own a lot of mirrorless cameras. Here's my favorite mirrorless camera right here. Fujifilm X-T3. I don't believe in mirrorless cameras. I don't give a shit about IBIS. I never gave a shit about IBIS. I don't give a shit about video either. The only reason that's my favorite camera probably of all time, kind of right next to the Nikon D500 and Nikon D4, Also, my GFX is really my favorite. The only reason I have that camera is because it's excellent. The build quality, the construction, the firmware improvements, on and on and on. I believe in superior cameras. I never bought into the hype of mirrorless. Mirrorless is not smaller, more lightweight. Contrary to all the BS and bullshit you read on YouTube and diaper review, 100% of hardcore working professional photographers, I said photographers, not videographers, don't give a shit about IBIS. They don't. They don't care about the video because they're photographers. They don't. They don't care about peaking or IBIS or video. They want a hardcore professional working camera. DSLR has its own advantages, and mirrorless has its own advantages. Yeah, of course, mirrorless market is creeping up on DSLR. Ultimately, those with a brain are not going to buy a mirrorless D5000 level camera with one goddamn card slot. Costs the same as the best DSLR ever made. At least you got a choice here between like the best DSLR ever made, Nikon D850, or this same piece of crap, a first generation mirrorless camera from Nikon with one card slot. Those with a brain, let me repeat that succinctly, those with a brain are not going to buy the camera. There are a lot of people that go, I got to have the latest and greatest, there's this new camera out, oh my god, it's the latest and greatest Nikon camera, it's first mirrorless, I'm going to buy it. There are those people. They're idiots. They have monkey brains. Of course they're going to buy the camera. Mirrorless and DSLR, as far as photography goes, are competing for the same market. You know, if you got $3,300 in one hand, and 3,000, you know, what are you going to do? You going to buy that or the Nikon D850? Really? Tell me again why you want to buy a Nikon Z7. Well, I shoot video. Well, if you're a video shooter, why don't you buy a Fujifilm or a Sony? I hate and despise Sony for countless reasons. But what's your reasoning for buying that Nikon? Well, you know, it's a Nikon. I actually had a couple of vloggers that used to, and I hate that. Actually, the one thing that creeps me out is when people like say too many good, nice things about me. That always creeped me out. Well, I fixed that problem with a couple of vloggers. Not vloggers, but bloggers. A couple of bloggers that used to like, you know, speak so highly. All of a sudden, they hate me. The reason they hate me is because I said the Nikon Z7 is a overpriced piece of crap. It's a first generation turd muffin. And that's exactly what it is. Even the people I can't stand on YouTube, people I have like no respect for, even they've come, this Nikon Z7 that's got slow autofocus, got issues, it won't screw drive, D-series lenses. Some of Nikon's best lenses are D-series lenses. You know, Nikon still makes D-series lenses, 105mm DC Nikkor f2, 135mm DC Nikkor. Nikon still makes manual focus AIS lenses, not too many of them, but they do. The 180mm 2.8 telephoto prime, one of the best lenses Nikon's ever made, screw drive lens, doesn't autofocus on the Z7 with the FTZ adapter. The Z7 is a POS. But anyway, that's a horrible review. If someone's a product photographer and they say, hey, I don't know what you're bitching about, man. This gets the job done. You're a product photographer shooting still life. You know? The hell are you talking about? The point is that it's got one card slot, which makes it non-professional. Okay? And, most importantly, for sports action, wildlife, photojournalism photographers, the autofocus on the Z7 sucks! Who the hell would buy it? A hardcore professional photographer with a brain that wants, I want to hit the shot when I want to hit it. When the shot's there, boom, 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 I want to hit it. You know, they're not going to buy a Z7. If they've got a half of a brain, they're going to buy a Nikon D850 or buy a Nikon D500. You see, I'm going to buy a Z7 for the same price as a Nikon D850. I'm going to buy a camera that underperforms, has one card slot, which actually sticks me in the hole for susceptibility for data loss, which I can't do or I'll lose my job. Yeah, idiocy. So this is how you do a pad camera review. Be a product photographer. Say, hey man, I don't know what you're bitching about. It gets the job done. Yeah, that's because the only thing you do is shoot non-moving still life. Look, it does it. Yeah, how about using that camera and then giving a test, a performance review while shit is moving towards you, away from you, or, you know, left to right? That's where the camera fails. It fails in many regards, but it definitely fails there. Oh, I'm not going to tell you who that reviewer is, but you could probably take a guess. Thank you for watching.